the state of Texas. A CVAP study is a study of the racial and ethnic data of the measured area, in this instance of the state of Texas. If this is not done, we will be using data from Census 2020 for this mid-decade redistricting, data that is outdated from 5 years ago. CVAP studies are done every census, but we have no updated census data currently. The United States Census is a nationwide count of every person living in the United States. It is meant to provide comprehensive data on the population's size, age, race, ethnicity, housing, and family structure makeup of this country. Typically, before any redistricting occurs, the country takes a census to determine what changes have occurred, which is why redistricting is done right after the census, like we did in 2021. However, for this rigged mid-decade redistricting scheme, there is no new census or even data being collected. Let's change that. This amendment mandates that the Secretary of State conduct a citizen voting age population study of the racial and ethnic groups of this state. Furthermore, the results would be publicly released by the Secretary of State before the last day to file as a candidate in the primary election held in 2026, and will also contain recommendations for legislative action if necessary. Republicans say that this rigged mid-decade redistricting scheme is not based on racial grounds, so let's find out. There should be no issue with this amendment if this new map is not based on racial grounds. This amendment would be beneficial because it could lay to rest any claims of racial gerrymandering once and for all for this proposal. Please support this amendment for a CVAP study. Let's make sure we have the appropriate data to understand the impact of what we're doing here during this unprecedented and uncommon mid-decade redistricting.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Moody, for what purpose?
will the gentlelady yield for some questions?
Does the gentlelady yield for questions?
I yield for questions.
Gentlelady yields for questions.
Thank you, Representative. And in laying out this amendment, you talked about the accuracy of data. You specifically referenced accurate population data. In fact, your amendment calls for a CVAP report to be produced. You would agree with me that it's fairly important in the redistricting process to have updated and accurate information, isn't that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And specifically, when we're talking about what your amendment does, and that directs the Secretary of State to gather this CVAP analysis, that is not something that is uncommon, right? That actually does, that happens when we go through the census process and the following redistricting process following the census.
Absolutely, that's correct. We're essentially just making sure that whatever is typically done in the census prior to when we typically redistrict is in fact being done through the CVAP study.
And so I think just so that we can go through this, the data you're trying to drill down to, and for those of us who have kind of worked around this policy area before, CVAP is a term that we use and stands for Citizen Voting Age Population. So we're not talking about the population, we're not talking about voting age population. We are then talking about probably the smallest subset of that, which would be citizen voting age population within those congressional districts that are being proposed here. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you further bracketed that to talk about looking at those numbers as it's based on racial ethnicities.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and being part of the redistricting committee, and I did this work back in 19 and 21 as well. We heard a lot of testimony about the growth of the population in this state, and that people of color make up 95% of Texas's recent population growth. But the map that we're seeing today, and again, we don't have the data that your amendment would provide, it creates more majority Anglo districts. Is that your understanding of the map that we have in front of us?
Yes, that is correct.
And I know that we've had a significant amount of conversation about what is driving the drawing of these maps, and that the claim is that there is no racial gerrymandering, and it's important, right? If racial gerrymandering is prohibited, and so the claim here is that that's not being done. Are you aware that that's the claim that's being made as it pertains to this particular map?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think drilling down to the core of your amendment, you were saying, if that's not what's going on here, then let's see. Because we don't see the CVAP numbers for these racial ethnicities. We are not seeing the CVAP data as current today. We are only seeing it as a snapshot of 2020. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There's only been 5 years that have passed since the census. Clearly, Texas has been growing in population. We want to make sure that the CVAP reflects, as far as that the particular redistricting that's going on right now, the mid-decade redistricting, in fact, is not racial gerrymandering.
Yes, and so I think that it's always best to be accurate with data, particularly when we're talking about protected, we have legal protections around certain types of gerrymandering. However, we're operating without that most current information. And if this didn't have those impacts, your amendment would actually allow us to bring that to light through the Secretary of State, and it would actually bring it to light before the filing deadline when these maps become effective.
Yes, that's correct.
And then secondarily, though, your amendment has a component to it that states if there are things that need to be mitigated after that Secretary of State report, there then is an opportunity to fix those. So even in the event that there is something that happened here that we don't know because we don't have the numbers, that would give an opportunity to alleviate those concerns around racial gerrymandering. Is that correct?
That is correct. The actual amendment itself indicates that after the creation of the report, that the Secretary of State can, in fact, not only report the results of the study, but provide recommendations for legislative or other action to correct any issues.
In your opinion, how important is it for the people that we all represent to have confidence in the fact that there is not racial gerrymandering going on here?
I think it's incredibly important, and more than anything, I know we, in particular, continue to keep talking about the cases that have come out of the U.S. Supreme Court. We want to make sure that this particular map does not violate both Section 2 of the VRA as well as the 14th and 15th Amendments as well.
And so the CVAP data that you're after here, to bring everything up to date, to say this is what Texas looks like today, that would be able to verify what's going on, what's underneath this, and if there is any racial gerrymandering going on. Is that the purpose of the amendment?
That is correct, and that's all that we're asking for, is just making sure, since we don't have a recent census and therefore redistricting based off that, we in fact compile the data that's needed to confirm that in fact these maps are not being drawn on racial lines.
And because certain racial groups have protections under the Voting Rights Act, is it your belief that having this CVAP data does in fact protect people's rights here in Texas under the Voting Rights Act?
Absolutely, I do.
Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Hunter in opposition. Thompson, for what purpose?
I want to know if the gentleman yield.
Not just yet.
Okay.
Not at this time.
Members, I'll be moving to table. The purpose of this amendment is to get the Secretary of State to get involved into data and census. And to me, it is basically another delay process. So my view is I'll be moving to table. Now I'll answer questions.
Thompson, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yield for
Yes.
questions?
Thank
He
you.
yields for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask you just three things and I'm through. Was that any consideration in looking at the Congressional District Number 9, the HCVA, the Hispanic voting age population in 9 after your substitute? Because it seems to show that they are barely 50% of Hispanics in that area. Was that by accident?
No, the data shows that the substitute made it at 50.15.
Okay,
So it
then-
modified.
Okay then, and I also noticed, and that there were some changes made in splitting precinct 414 in 4 different ways at 4 different times. And what was the purpose of splitting that precinct those 4 different times?
Personal knowledge, none, just the criteria of
So you don't know what
performance,
kind of
not specific knowledge.
okay, then, so that was, the criteria was considered in, you don't know what criteria was utilized?
The council looked at all the criteria. I personally did not.
But you're not aware of what was that criteria that caused
No,
the
ma'am.
splitting?
No, ma'am.
And lastly, there was also a splitting of precinct 533 and 386 in that area as well. Do you know the purpose of splitting those precincts?
Same answer on that.
You don't know what data may have been considered
No, just
in?
relied on council and they went through everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Move to table.
Seat Hernandez to close.
Thank you, Speaker and members. I understand that Representative wants to do a motion to table. All we're asking here is that we make sure that the maps that in fact are being drafted are not infringing on and illegal in violating both Section 2 of the BRA as well as the 14 and 15 amendments. This is not anything different that's done during the census prior to whenever we typically redistrict. And so all we're asking is that the CVAP study be done and that it be done in a timely way, that people are aware of how it impacts them prior to the last day of filing for the primary for congressional candidates here in the state of Texas. So I would ask respectfully that all of you vote in making sure that we are transparent, that we are making sure that we are not violating these laws, and that we are making sure that Texans recognize that we are not in the business of silencing our communities and our people. I respectfully ask that you vote against the motion to table. Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez sends up an amendment. Mr. Hunter has been moved to table. The questions on the motion to table, clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye, Ms. Garcia Hernandez voting nay. Have all members voted? Mr. Walkout voting aye. Have all members voted? 87 ayes, 52 nays. The motion to table prevails. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Bernal.
Chair has Mr. Bernal.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Pursuit for what purpose?
raise a point of order against further consideration of the Bernal Amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that it is not germane.
Bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment has been withdrawn. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Questions for the author. Be polite. Be a gentleman.
Amendment by Garcia of Dallas.
Chair recognizes Ms. Garcia.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr. Speaker. Members, my amendment is straightforward. This bill would not go into effect
Speaker.
until Congress enacts legislation to make Social Security
Massoud,
solvent.
I raise a point of order against further consideration of this amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that it is not germane.
Bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment's been withdrawn.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Jones, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Did you know how many members accepted DPS supervision over the last 24 hours?
Chair is not advised.
Do you know that each member
Ms.
was
Jones, for what
assigned?
purpose?
Oh, my apologies. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Do you know that each member that was assigned to DPS supervision had 2 members assigned to them 24 hours a day?
Chair is not advised.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker,
Jones, for what purpose?
parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Do you know, or was there an account taken of the assignments that DPS officers were pulled off of before being assigned to surveillance members of the Texas House?
Chair is not advised.
All right. Last question, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Do you know that the tasks that were assigned previously to being assigned to members were high-level investigations, sex crime, as well as fraud division officers were pulled to surveillance House members?
Chair is not advised.
Thank you.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Lalani.
Chair has Dr. Lalani.
Mr. Speaker,
Proceed for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of the Lalani amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that it is not germane to the bill.
Bring your point of order down front.
Thank you.
The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment's been withdrawn. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment. Mr. Wu.
Amendment by Wu.
Chair recognizes Mr. Wu.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Kane, for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of this amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that the amendment is not germane to the bill.
Bring your point of order down front. Mr. Kane raises a point of order against further consideration of the Wu Amendment, Amendment number 11, under Rule 11, Section 2, on the grounds that the amendment is not germane to the bill. The bill changes the composition of districts for the election of members to the United States House of Representatives. The Wu Amendment makes the effective date of the bill contingent on a matter that is not even remotely related to the congressional redistricting. The amendment is not germane. Accordingly, the point of order is sustained. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Y. Davis of Dallas.
Chair recognizes Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is an amendment that I'm bringing forward to the body because I think we have kind of gotten off pace, and I just want to make sure that we understand that we passed a redistricting bill in 2021. For the most part, more than 80% of this body was a part of that bill. Maybe 85% of us are the same ones who passed this bill in 2021. So I'm bringing this back for consideration because I think it's important that you realize that the tweaks that I made are amendments that we offered during that time. But I don't know why we're changing something we did in 2021. Chairman Hunter presented a redistricting bill. This body voted on it. We considered the facts that you have to consider where it deals with all of the guidelines. I'm just wondering, why are we changing this bill? Why are we doing this again? And so I'm wondering, when did this notion that we now don't consider communities of interest, we don't consider breaking up political subdivisions, this winner-take-all approach that says because we can, we're gonna diminish the presence of districts that have been here. So I'm just wondering, why wouldn't we go back to what we did as a body? Are these Texas decisions or somebody else's decisions? Because we did this in 2021. So my map, C2165, basically puts people back together. They talked about coalition districts. Well, the map that you presented creates coalition districts already. Your map that Chairman Hunter has today creates coalition districts. So we know there are some form of coalition districts you can have, notwithstanding what the Justice Department said. There is a way to have coalition districts. It's just how we define them. And I would submit that your map allows them, if they are coalition districts between Hispanics and Anglo districts, and Hispanic and African American districts are unacceptable. Again, this issue of race continues to be some of the guiding factors that's leading us to this divide. As Texans, we have had 4 congressional seats for African American districts to represent the African American community in the state of Texas, beyond our geographic, but also the state of Texas. And we're now going to diminish that, knowing that our population, African American community, has grown. We're going to put a map in place that would diminish it down to 2. Just doesn't make sense that if Texas is who we say we are, one state for Texas, why then would we eliminate districts where minority representation is diminished? We cannot have a state where we believe that we would minimize the impact of every voter in this state. And we know this map does that. So this amendment basically clarifies that the districts that we're pairing, because we have pairings, but we have much fewer pairings than on the map that's being presented today. We did not break up communities' interests. We made sure that we limited the splitting of counties, all of the factors that would make Texas as strong as possible. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, members, I'd ask that you consider what's good for Texas and for Texans. How do we do what's right for Texas? And this map would at least maximize what you all did in 2021, and I say you all because you were the majority then, and it allows us, other citizens in Texas, to have a presence because we are here as well. And so I would just encourage you to look at the growth, the population growth, and how we move districts to support the growth of this state. We're all one, we say, but yet we're willing to take away from districts, take districts away. So I would ask you to consider Congressional Plan C2165. It creates African American districts and Hispanic districts at CVAP 50 plus, so we meet the standards that the Justice Department has says we need to do. It does fewer pairings. We pair many less districts than the current map before us. So again, I think this is a compromise of how do we maximize the presence. You still, as a majority, have maintained the presence that you created in 2021, but it allows us also to maintain and recognize the growth of the communities across the state. With that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption.
Mr. Pursuit for what purpose?
Would the lady yield for questions?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Sure.
She yields for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I take it from your layout, it's your contention that this amendment complies with the Voting Rights Act. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I looked at the data for the 2024 election for Donald Trump in Texas and looked at the partisan performance of these districts that you have put together in this plan. Would it surprise you to learn that this plan that you put together would give 16 seats that perform in favor of Democratic candidates in your map? Would you dispute that? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware that it does give 16 seats. In fact, it says it's just the opposite. We understand it to be different than that.
So when I looked at the 2024 election result data, it showed 16 seats with more than a 50% partisan performance, and that would be an increase of 3 seats over what is currently there. Are you aware of that?
I'm thinking your data must be different than mine.
Sure.
And therefore, because we see it as 12 Democratic seats versus 16.
But let's assume with me for a moment that it is 16. That would be 42% of the seats. Are you aware that the Democratic Party and congressional candidates in 2024 only got 40.39% of the vote?
No, I just suggested that I think we have different information because we don't have 16 seats. And according to the data we have, we say it only takes us 12, so I don't have the same information.
Understood. We'll take a look at the data. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Particularly for what purpose?
will the lady yield for questions?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
She yields for questions.
Ms. Davis, can I ask where this map came from?
Yes, it came from my office. We've done redistricting for the last 30 years, every cycle, and the interim cycle that we did redistricting as well, it came from there.
Okay.
If you will notice, it would be the map that I presented in 2021. I don't know if you were here, you might not have been, but for the last 30 years, I've presented maps to maximize the presence so that African American voices can be heard in Texas through their governmental process.
This map is the same as a previous map that you filed?
With some additional, yes. We filed this in 2021.
It's the same one. Did you hold any public hearings on this map?
It was brought to the floor, and it didn't. It was information we pulled together from our constituents. So we didn't have. I wasn't on redistricting to have the hearings. We didn't have hearings around. It was presented when Chairman Hunter was chairman of redistricting. He didn't allow us to make presentations, so it was brought to the floor.
And when did you file this map this time?
It was filed when we first started having redistricting first came up.
Okay.
I don't know the actual date.
Okay. Did you receive any outside counsel for this map?
No.
You didn't work with anybody? Okay.
No. Let me tell you who I work with. I work with the constituents and members that we've worked with this over the past years in terms of trying to ensure that we capture districts that represent the people of the state of Texas. So no, I don't have an outside counsel. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a lay person who has worked on this and continue to believe that Texas can do better.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that several members on the floor today have questions and influences that are coming from third parties, scripted questions, from influence from the NAACP?
Well, would you be surprised? You'd be surprised that in the last 30 years that every redistricting I've offered maps, because my person in my office works on maps over the years. Would you be surprised about that? This is not a new thing for me. This is something I worked on continuously. So I haven't needed to get outside counsel. I'm involved in the community, the state, and redistricting over the years.
In the hearings, the redistricting hearings, a lot of the testimonies that we heard were about some of the odd shapes and the stretched districts, but a lot of those are maintained in your map. So did you consider compactness of the districts, whereas some of the districts that were the most concerned had a distance across that was less than half a mile?
Okay. It's like the one that they're drawing here in the maps that you're presenting that go the whole length of Texas, that go from Austin down to Port Aransas. I was much more compact than that, and they were drawn much more compact than that. We don't have one that leaves here and goes to West Texas.
I'm looking at several that are stretches.
Don't know what you're looking at.
Erratic shapes and some stretches.
That's long been an issue with regard to redistricting, and I can assure you our maps are much more compact than the ones that we're considering on the map that the chairman is presenting today.
Are you aware that the current map actually does fix a lot more compactness, and it also draws the lines on natural boundaries, keeping counties whole? The natural boundaries, it's not, a lot of the cities are no longer cut in half.
But you have some that still are.
Okay. Did you have this map reviewed by any federal oversight to make sure it's in compliance with the Voting Rights Act? Okay, thank you.
I don't have the luxury of a law firm drawing my map and bringing it to me and say present it. I didn't have that luxury. What I have is a staff person who has consistently for the last 40 years been involved in redistricting and making sure that we look at how we get the best representation for all Texans.
Mr. Reynolds, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I move that all the remarks on House Bill 4 be reduced to writing and placed in the journal.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair is none so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, may the gentlelady yield for questions?
Yes.
Time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I move for an extension of time.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? There's a record vote requested on all motions today. Clerk, ring the bell. So Mr. Hunter voting aye. King voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 110 ayes and 23 nays. The motion to extend time prevails.
Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Reynolds, for what purpose?
Would the gentlelady yield for questions? Well.
Does Jenny yield for questions?
Yes.
I
She
do.
yields for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Davis, what does refresh my memory, what does your amendment seek to do?
Actually, we seek to maximize the growth and development of the communities that live here in Texas. We had a base map. I took the base map that we passed in 2021 out of this chamber to make sure that we comply with the rules of engagement as it relates to the redistricting process. And we looked at ways to ensure that we didn't minimize and not take away from any of the constituents. So this map seeks to do that. So one of the challenges that they brought forth with redistricting is that the CVAP and the Justice Department said that they need to be 50 plus. So we attempted to make that 50 plus for these districts we're presenting. The amendments to, that's all we did, was to comply with what Justice Department said.
So just so we're clear for purposes of this discussion, your amendment is based on the census data from the 2020 census. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that for redistricting, the normal course of redistricting is after we get a census every decade?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that based on the 2020 census, that 95% of the growth in Texas was based on the growth of minorities that included African Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanics, the Latino community? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so your map attempts to reflect that growth in minority populations. Is that correct?
As well as the growth, but as well as adjusting the numbers in the districts relative to what the Department of Justice said was flawed in the map that we passed.
So one of the questions I want to ask, you indicated when you were being questioned by the previous witness, you indicated that you've worked on redistricting for the past 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so you know a little bit about redistricting, correct?
Just a tad bit. It changes. It's evolving. I never knew us to do this.
Is it unusual to have a mid-decade redistricting?
It is unusual to have a mid-decade redistricting plan. That has not been a practice. It happened one other time that I've been here. And as Chairman Hunter said, you can do it. But the question is, why are we doing something that we've already done? And we did this in 2021. And, you know, if we're not going to perfect it, why are we changing it to alter it to be more draconian on us and constituents than better?
Representative Davis, are you aware that the state of Texas has more African American population than any other state in the United States of America?
I am aware of that. This is the largest African American community across the nation.
And are you aware that currently there are 4 African American congressional seats in the state of Texas?
At this point, there's 4 and potentially 1 that we could do as a coalition district or as an emerging district, opportunity district.
And so if we can identify for the purposes of this record, you have currently the 9th congressional district, that is Congressman Al Green. You have the 18th congressional district that was previously held by Congressman Sylvester Turner, who is deceased, and the seat is vacant. You have the 30th congressional district held by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and the 33rd congressional district held by Congressman Mark Vesey. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And those are 4 African American districts in Texas, correct?
That's correct. And what we tried to make sure in this map, our amendment adjusts the CVAP according to the challenges that the Justice Department had raised. And for example, we reduced in CD9 the Hispanic CVAP from 50.5 to 50.2, so that we would not, we didn't change it, we just addressed it.
And you say we addressed it. We addressed it to make sure it complied with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, correct?
That's correct.
And specifically Section 2, correct?
That's correct.
And would you agree with me that we've already heard from Chairman Hunter that the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Section 2, is still current law?
That is correct.
And isn't it true also that Texas in the past has been found to have intentionally discriminated when it came to redistricting against African Americans and Hispanics? Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, we still have a case pending from the seat from the maps from 2001, because we continue to have this problem with knowingly discriminating or creating a discriminatory map as it relates to African Americans.
And Representative Davis, isn't it also true that based on the current proposed map that you're seeking to correct, isn't it true that House Bill 4 dilutes the African American congressional representation by a whopping 50%?
That's correct, and so that's what troubles me.
So we're reducing, even though Texas has more African Americans than any other state, and even though, based on the 2020 census data, we had an increase in African American population. We are now, based on this current map, instead of increasing it to reflect the population growth, we're actually decreasing it in half. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's the challenge here, is that we're now talking about minimizing and decreasing representation that we currently have. Why would we take a state that we're saying we're growing and now we're going to take it down? So that's what this amendment does, is seeks to recognize the growth and protect the integrity of those populations.
And as I read I did look at your amendment. Your amendment seeks to not pack and crack African American and Latino communities. Isn't that correct?
That's right, because essentially what you're doing is saying, and this is kind of the challenge for us as Texans, we need to recognize that our communities are more interdependent and interrelated than they are. And so we cannot just eliminate districts because you don't vote that way. You've got to allow the representation of all people. And if you don't, you're going to be, they're calling it racial political gerrymandering, but it amounts to being racially gerrymandering.
Well, Representative Davis, would you agree with me that the proposed House Bill 4 is a racial gerrymandered map?
And in the conversation that Chairman Hunter laid out, he said it's politically, but the impact politically has been, it is racially. So while it was political, it also had racial implications.
Right, it's a racial gerrymander.
We're trying to make sure that we don't put a map in place that is legally gerrymandering it.
Right, and so when you look at, and I want to hone in on House Bill 4, when you hone in on House Bill 4, it pairs CD 9 held by Congressman Al Green with CD 18, correct?
That's correct.
And isn't it true, based on your experience, that Congressional District 18 was first held by Congresswoman Barbara Jordan as the first African-American Congresswoman since Reconstruction that was only after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, correct?
That's correct. And I want to mention 18 because 2001, we went through many discussions about restoring the integrity of 18 and the voters.
Correct.
In District 18. So basically, we would be undoing what we just did in 2001 to District 18, CD 18.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I want to make sure that the record is clear on that. Back in 2021, it seems like I remember very vividly that then Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee had to come to Austin before the redistricting committee to talk about the unpairing of the 9th and the 18th Congressional District, correct?
That's correct.
They had Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee paired with Congressman Al Green, correct?
That's correct.
And we were able
the committee here reviewed, redistricted, and restored 18.
It restored it.
It restored it because they found that it made sense that it would be restored versus leaving that pairing. And now we're sitting here doing something the same thing.
Now we're doing it all over again, correct?
That's correct.
I don't know about you, but I would imagine that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Sylvester Turner, Congresswoman Barbara Jordan would be turning over in their grave if they saw this. Would you agree with me?
I agree that is why it was changed in 2021, because we found it to be totally wrong. And here we are again doing the same thing. It's totally wrong today as it was then.
The lady's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd ask that you
Chair recognizes Mr. Hunter in opposition.
You can't end yet. Members, I will be moving the table for the simple reason that I like my plan better than hers. And just to be straightforward, but I'll be moving the table on this particular amendment.
Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Reynolds, what?
Would the gentleman yield for 2 questions?
Sure.
Will the gentleman yield? Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter. I wanted to ask this question of my time ran out, but you can clarify this, Chairman Hunter. So isn't it true that under your proposed House Bill 4, Congressman Al Green, who is currently the congressman of the 9th Congressional District, under the new map, he is in the 18th congressional district. Isn't that true?
Well, what he said in the hearings is he